guys, this is Mystery 85. Today on our 2004 Mercury Marauder, I'll be showing you how to both test your old ignition coils that you're replacing, as well as how to install the new ones. And I'll also go over some of the steps it takes to actually install a new set of ignition coils. And since we're doing the ignition coils on this car, and we'll be going to a supercharger soon, I'll also show you how to both install the spark plugs and install the ignition coils. Here are the tools you'll need for this job. You'll need one spark plug socket, one 10mm socket for the valve covers, preferably a 10 or 12-inch extension, 3/8 or 1/2 inch, preferably a 3/8 drive and ratchet, as well as a 3/8 spark plug socket, one standard screwdriver, and you'll also need one ratchet, of course, preferably a 3/8. This is a 1/2 inch, so if you use a 1/2 inch, you'll probably need a 1/2 inch to 3/8 adapter. All right, so the first step that we'll do to remove the spark plugs and the coil packs on the driver's side of this engine is to use our flathead screwdriver and take the intake air pipe apart. And this is fairly easy. You just run those out a little bit and it should remove itself quite easily. One thing you'll also note along this tube is there's also a part of the PCV system on the back that comes from the valve cover. You'll also want to remove that. So when I pull this out, take that out of the valve cover, pull it out here, and the intake pipe should come from the air housing, just like so. And now you've got full unvetted access to the valve cover. Next step, you want to take your 10mm socket. This is a 6-point. You don't need a 1/2 inch wrench, but I have one for this because it's the ratchet set that I have. So if you have that, as long as you have the 10mm socket, you're good. You'll want to go ahead and loosen these on your valve cover. And when you loosen these, it will expose the coil packs and the connectors to the coil packs. Alright, got those broken loose. I'm just going to spin them off by hand now. Doesn't take much. Alright, want to put our bolts in a safe location because we don't want to lose those. That keeps the engine looking all nice and fancy. We'll take this plate off and just set it there quaintly. As you can see, it exposes 4 of the coils. These are cylinders 5, 6, 7, and 8. Because it's a modular 4-valve engine, they go from front to back. So this is your driver's bank. The next step we're going to make is taking these coil packs out. They just lift straight out of the cylinder and can be directly unplugged like so. As you see, there's a plug. There's a coil pack. Lift it up, remove this coil pack, and we're just removing every coil pack. If you're going to replace coil packs, I highly suggest replacing the spark plugs as well, since you're in there. In this case, we are, just because we have some changes that we're going to make. There's all 4, just like that. That was very easy. Those are the old coil packs. Now I have full access to my spark plug holes. If you're installing spark plugs, this is the same procedure as well for that. So since I want to take spark plugs out, I'm going to get my extension. I suggest at least a 10 to 12-inch extension. That makes it easy to get into the cylinder. And we're going to take our spark plug tool. This is a 3/8 spark plug tool, and it has a magnetic pickup as well to pick the spark plugs up out of the cylinder. I'm all tooled up. Just going to insert the tool down in, and once I've got it in position, start breaking them loose. First plug is broken loose. One thing you'll want to note on this cylinder 8 is you do have some wires here as well. That goes to the transmission harness for the ECM, and you'll have some cables in the way, so you just want to be cautious when you're getting to that cylinder. There we go. I highly suggest inspecting your spark plugs when you pull them out of each cylinder, and make a note of what cylinder you took the spark plug out of when reading spark plugs as well. This move is just to make sure that you don't have any oil, any odd breakage on the ceramic, or any other issues like fouling of a plug on a cylinder, because that can be an indicator of engine health. All my plugs look great from cylinder to cylinder. And the next step in this process will be to install a spark plug on each cylinder. You want to lightly set each plug. They will self-locate. 1, 2, 3, and 4. Each plug is in position. I highly suggest starting with the tool and inserting it down and hand tightening first. You don't want to ratchet or impact tighten spark plugs. That is not recommended, as I am hand tightening each one of these to make sure it threads in straight and correct. You also want to be sure you do this on a cold engine. The extension, put it in a tightened position, give it one tighten and one more bump. Take this one more bump. Oh yeah, that one's already quite tight. Take this one and one more bump, and tighten the last one. One snug and then one more bump. There we go. That one bump will make sure it's not over tightened. You don't want to over tighten your spark plugs when you're installing them. Alright, as you'll see here, it's time to install the coil packs. Each coil pack I use is an OEM coil pack. As you can see, these are Motorcraft OEM coil packs. They're very expensive, but they are worth the money. You can go ahead and get these at Tosca Ford and different sites. You can also get them at your dealership directly. All you want to do is take each cylinder and install a plug directly onto the plug, like so. You'll feel it kind of give a little very lightweight click when you do get it installed. As I'm coming down with that final cylinder 8, I'll go ahead and plug her in. There we go. That one is plugged in. This one is snug and plugged in. Alright, get this one lined up. Snug and plugged in. And the final one here, snug and plugged in. Bam. Very easy. Your harness, you want to make sure your harness is sitting evenly in the recess of the head. This is a C head vehicle and coil and plug. So since it's not wired based, spark plug wire based, it doesn't have the little pass-throughs on the cover. It only has one pass-through that's at the rear of the head, and you want to make sure that gasket is good and secure so that water can intrude. You also want to look at your gasket on the cover. I always suggest inspecting it. If you note that the cover gasket is going bad, you can get a replacement from Ford, and that's very important to keep water out of the spark plug area. As you can see, it's very clean in there, and that's a sign that I don't have any water intrusion. What we're going to do is slide this in underneath that wire harness for the transmission and lightly line it up. We'll go ahead and start our screws in each position, and you want to hand start those screws as usual. You don't want to do any type of impact tightening on these bolts. They will not take that type of force. It will destroy the bolt. And we'll take this just to screw things down a little bit more. There we go. That's snug. And we'll get this last one snug also. Bam. You don't want to put any hard pressure on those. No need to be the Hulk on those bolts. They will stay in position. The driver's side of the engine is done. We'll take our air intake, stock air intake, and place it back into position. Beware of your pipe that goes into the valve cover. We'll plug that back in like so, and then we'll get this into position on the throttle body and the mass airflow. And that's about it. Get this last piece in, covering that fully. Feel around to be sure that it is covering the entire diameter of the throttle body and the mass airflow. Now that those are in position, we'll tighten them back snugly and check for any distortion on the band. That feels great. And over here, just the same. We are tight. That feels great. Do just a movement test. Make sure it's not going to come off. Everything's secure, and also make sure that your pipe that goes to the valve cover is snug. And that's it for the driver's side, just like that. On to the passenger side of these engines, things are a lot easier. You don't have an intake tube to contend with, and you won't need a flathead for this portion of the work. The only thing in the way is this one heater core hose, which it can be moved to the side, and the fuel line, which you want to be careful of. You don't want to cause any damage to your fuel line there. So we'll get started. We're just going to jump right into it, and we're going to get this valve cover off. To remove it, cover comes off easily, and there are your cylinders. Here you can see exactly how everything is arranged in the head. You can see here you have your cable, and you also have each plug, your coils for cylinder 1, cylinder 2, cylinder 3, and cylinder 4. And these passenger side coil packs were either replaced at some point, or these are the original parts. Some coil packs appeared to be replaced and some did not, so we're replacing them with all new ones due to some issues and intermittent misfires that have been observed over the lifetime of having this vehicle. While uninstalling these, it's also a great time to verify your valve cover spark plug gaskets. Beneath the valve cover are gaskets for each cylinder that seal the engine oil from escaping out of the valve cover into each spark plug hole. You just want to be sure there isn't any oil residue out in each cylinder spark plug hole. If there is some oil starting to build up, that means one of those gaskets is going bad, and eventually it would be wise to replace it. Testing the coil packs. So testing the coil packs, you can test your primary and your secondary. You'll want a multimeter. The first position you'll want to put your multimeter on for ohms, if it is a selectable like this older Fluke 8060 I have, is you'll want to use your lower scale. So we want to see the coil itself across the contacts, and we're getting a total of about 0.53 ohms, which is perfect. You'll want to move one lead from the primary contact to the actual lead, and I'll have to swap this meter over to the 20,000 range. You should see about 5,000 ohms or so. We're seeing 5,540 ohms. That's pretty good. Right, now that's a brand new coil. Now we'll look at one of these old used coils and see what we get there. Since that was the last position the multimeter was on, I will test it at that rate, 5,900. So we're certainly seeing a higher rating on this coil than brand new, but that's actually not that bad as far as the scale or range goes. And we'll test the primary here. We are seeing about 0.65 ohms. So that is actually a much higher, that's a higher resistance than the new ones. So there is some aging on these coils.